Far out in the uncharted backwaters of the unfashionable end of the western spiral arm of the galaxy lies a small, unregarded yellow sun. Orbiting this at a distance of roughly 92 million miles is an utterly insignificant little blue-green planet whose ape-descended life forms are so amazingly primitive that two of them still think doing a podcast called Digital Watches are a pretty neat idea is a pretty neat idea. These podcasters have, or rather had, a problem, which was this. Actually, this is the solution.
Two men, two amazingly primitive men, thought this was a pretty neat idea. They were dreamers, thinkers, speculative philosophers, or as their wives would have it, idiots.
Hey, Bryan, what's this?
Hey, Jeff. Well, this is our retelling of the stories and anecdotes that are contained within the Neil Gaiman book, Don't Panic, all about the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and its creation.
Right. So more than a biography of Douglas, it's a biography of the creation of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And I have to admit, for some reason, there's some trepidation about doing this particular podcast. I'm trying to think about why that would be. And one of the things that I'm going to say at the outset, because sometimes, you know, if you don't get all the way to the end, you don't get all the comments about the book and all that kind of stuff. So
right.
Here goes at the beginning. I'll have to tell you, when you become intimately familiar with another person's life, sometimes you can find out details that you didn't really want to know.
Yes.
And one of the things that I felt like I experienced when I read this book was I knew that Douglas Adams has we'll call it a quirky personality. But it seems like Neil Gaiman has pointed us in the direction that there was some depression or some sadness in his life that was something that he dealt with constantly. Not really a surprise when you consider the life of a comic person or a comedian, or in our case, an author.
Right.
I always wanted to think of Douglas Adams as someone that you'd meet on the street and he'd be smiling, he'd slap you on the back and tell you a joke. But I don't get the impression after having read this book that that's the man that existed. Only the man that existed in my reality of him.
Right. I will agree with that. And I want to say a couple of things in that regard. First, when I am reading more and more biographies of Douglas, I get sad. Like it further shows me the loss the world sustained by his early passing. Right. And I just get sad all over again. So right. For that reason, I'm not like really excited to go into this book because there'll probably be a part in here that is going to be sad. I was listening to somebody else who was an author, and they were talking about somebody coming up to them and talking about an artist or a musician or another author or whatever. And they said to this person how sad that they were that they discovered this person was a tortured soul. Mm-hmm. And this guy I was listening to said, I just want to let you know, all artists, whatever the medium, are tortured souls. Every single one of them. They could not create what they create if they weren't a tortured soul. Now, there are varying degrees, but there's going to be tortured soul in there somewhere.
Yeah, Yeah, it was so funny. And I was thinking about that, and I thought about some characters that might be similar, that had comic genius and just lived tragic lives, And I won't say that Douglas Adams' life is tragic. I mean, the only thing tragic in Douglas Adams' life, in my opinion, is his death, as you've already pointed out.
Yes.
But I think of John Candy, I think of other actors like that.
Robin Williams.
Robin Williams, yeah, that's a perfect example. Robin Williams, his death was sad too, but in his particular case, I think didn't he have Parkinson's, and he was diagnosed and chose to end his life before it became an issue?
I didn't know if there was any health issues that kind of spurred on the taking of his own life.
I do believe they were, yep.
Well, that makes me feel a little bit better in a way, because never in watching Robin Williams in any form did I ever look like this was a troubled soul. Right.
But he was an awesome actor, and his range that he was able to portray and all the different shows that he did,
Yes.
really indicated that he had a depth to his personality that he kept within himself. And, it's different in that we can look at Robin Williams and we can look at a huge swath of acting opportunities and things that we've interacted with. But when we're looking at Douglas Adams, all we've done is read his material, listened to his story, listened to his voice. So we don't have a physical picture of him in our minds as much. And so we don't have what did he look like when he was walking around on a daily basis, so we fill in all those gaps in our own mind. And that's where you hit the nail on the head. You say it exactly correctly, that once we've read more and more about his life and the struggles that he went through, we do feel compassion. And then, of course, the sadness that's related to his passing. So,
yes.
But anyway, I have to say, on the other side of that same coin, this is an excellent book.
Yes, it is.
And it's given me some excellent insight into things that I didn't know. And I'm excited that we're talking about that today.
Right. So since we have already talked about biography, The Salmon of Doubt, and there have been other times that we've talked about things that we've heard of from his life, obviously, vast majority of that is in this book.
Mm-hmm.
So what I want to do is just talk about random things that I found interesting that I had never heard before, or if I did hear them before, that I forgot about.
Right. Well, that sounds like a good approach. Otherwise, we would be retreading some old tires here, I'm going to tell you.
Right, because there was a lot of repeat, and it was great reading all of the stuff that you already have heard of, but in a slightly different perspective. But the base information is the same, and our summary would be just a repeat of what we've already done.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm going to start right out in Chapter 1, and something that I had not heard that I thought was pretty funny is that evidently people worried about Douglas Adams as a kid, and they thought he may have intellectual disabilities because, quote, he was the only kid who anybody he knew had ever seen actually walk into a lamppost with his eyes wide open, end quote. So he would be in his own world, walking down the street, smack into a lamppost.
Absolutely. And along those lines, I didn't realize, I knew that he was a tall person because of what I've seen, but it does indicate, even there in the very beginning, it talks about the fact that he's 6 feet 5 inches tall as an adult. And so he must have been, and he was a gangly kid. I remember reading stories about that in the Salmon of Doubt book. One of the other things we learned in Chapter 1 that I think is really interesting, of course, is that he was a fan of comic books.
Yes.
Just like we were, are. And his favorite character apparently was Dan Dare.
Ooh, yes.
And what I thought was really interesting is you see this picture of him, because of course you look that up on the internet, and you see he's got this great big jaw, and it's out there, he's like Mr. Macho, And I thought it was interesting also that it was illustrated by a gentleman by the name of Hampson, and he continued to work in the comic industry until 1985.
Oh. So was Dan Dare in the Eagle which was Britain's top children's comic?
Yes, he definitely was an Eagle, and he also apparently had his own comic book series.
Oh, all right. Because what I wanted to say about Eagle is that is where Douglas found print for the first time with one of his short stories.
Right.
And for me, the best part of the story really, I mean, really, really, really affirms our belief that Douglas Adams cannot let go of a bit that he thinks is funny, no matter how long ago it was written. Because this short story contains his first version of the memory like a sieve joke that made an appearance in both Shada and Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Isn't that funny? Absolutely. Never let a good joke go unretold.
Right. Oh, to a new audience.
Right, exactly.
So as I mentioned, there's a lot of this that we've already discussed and we all know about. So we're not going to go chapter by chapter reciting chapters because there are going to be a few chapters that would just have been totally recapped. So we're just going to go down with the bits that we enjoyed out of the book.
Absolutely.
The next thing I thought was interesting is that Douglas Adams has a very difficult time fitting in with the Footlights comedy troupe in Cambridge because it seems that they did not get his humor. So I guess Footlights is kind of like a live on stage version of every improv troupe, but it's not necessarily improv. They do sketch comedy. So I guess it would be a sketch comedy group like Monty Python, but on stage, or like Kids in the Hall, but on stage.
Yes, absolutely.
And the Footlights comedy troupe was the big deal in Cambridge. I mean, they were the shit. And because they didn't get his humor, he and two other friends formed Adams, Smith, and Adams. And the Smith in that Adams, Smith, Adams is Bloody Martin Smith from Croydon. And he also, coincidentally, went into advertising.
Right.
So I found that was pretty funny. And I do not know if he was the first or the third name in that group. And then oddly enough, at one point for one of the Footlights shows, the producers went to Adams, Smith, and Adams and asked if they could use some of their material.
Right.
And they agreed that they could use their material for one of their shows. But then they found out they weren't going to be in the show. Except, of course, Martin Smith was in the show. Neither of the Adams made the show, but they did let Martin Smith be in the show.
Right.
So John Lloyd talked about some of Douglas Adams's sketches from Footlights. And he said they were some of the unfunniest sketches. When he teamed up with Smith and Adams, they became the best troupe. And he mentioned one of their bits that I thought was good. Dangerous, but good.
Okay.
At some point, they would start telling jokes very slowly to drive people to the bar. And the establishments had to be pleased with that. So
yeah, absolutely.
To keep people drinking, they would slow down their performances to drive them out of the room and get a drink. Oh. And then I guess I want to mention what a completely stand-up guy Christopher Reeve was. The actor who played Superman. Because in 1979, the Hugo Award for Best Dramatic Presentation, Hitchhikers lost out to Superman. That year, the award ceremony was held at the World Science Fiction Convention in Brighton, England. When the nominees were announced, the crowd hissed at Superman and cheered Hitchhikers. Christopher Reeve was there to collect the trophy for Superman after they were announced the winner. And in his speech, he suggested that the awards were fixed. And he received loud applause and cheers. Mm-hmm. I can't imagine what it would be like to be Christopher Reeve accepting an award, getting just booed out of existence, and then coming back and getting cheers. So what a guy he was.
Yeah, yep. That was neat. So a little bit later on in the book, they talk about the fact that, he was unemployed and looking for work, and he finally gets a job working as a radio producer.
Right.
Which seemed to suit him pretty well, but in typical fashion, he didn't last very long at the radio station.
No.
He almost immediately took a job when it was offered as a script editor for Doctor Who, where he apparently worked there from 77 through 80.
Right.
Which I thought was really interesting. And I know we've talked a bit about Doctor Who, and I'm sure we're going to talk a little bit more about it too, because there's a good deal about his experiences with the Doctor Who franchise in this particular book. But there was one other thing that I thought was interesting right after that, and that was the fact that there is, and this will be something I think the two of us are going to have to listen to, because it just seems like it's going to be hysterical. He did a script for a radio show, Radio Echoes, has it available so that we can listen to it.
Oh, okay.
Called Black Cinderella 2 Goes East. Okay? And, in these racially tense times, I'm not sure exactly what that means.
Right.
But this is number 2. So
right.
The original Black Cinderella was out there somewhere.
Yeah.
What's fascinating about this is there's, like I said, we can go listen to it. It's an hour long, and it features one of our favorite actors of all time, Mr. John Cleese.
Oh, wow.
And I was curious, green and yellow, so I did listen to about 3 minutes of the audio, and I'm really looking forward to it. So I know you and I are going to end up reviewing that for our audience as well.
Yeah, I never looked up to see if that was available anywhere. I just assumed it wasn't. Mm-hmm. I'm glad you have found it.
I have found it, and I'm looking forward to listening to it and sharing it with our audience.
Yes. Well, another thing that we can watch and share with our audience is apparently the Doctor Who story that he wrote under the BBC departmental pseudonym of David Agnew. A little bit about that. Evidently, there are some weird copyright laws about who writes what, when, where, and how. And if you totally rewrite a script that was written by somebody else, you don't get the script credit. It goes to David Agnew. So on Doctor Who, there is no David Agnew. So if you ever see something written by David Agnew, it was written by not David Agnew, but you may not ever know who it is.
Right. That's like the American director Smithy.
Okay, yes. Yeah.
Who doesn't really exist.
So the story that he wrote was The Pirate Planet, and apparently it contains some Hitchhiker's in-jokes. Mm-hmm. So I want to see if we can find those, because sometimes what some people think are in-jokes aren't necessarily in-jokes.
They're right out there.
Yes.
Or we call them Easter eggs. They call them in-jokes.
Yes.
Yeah, apparently the Pirate Planet is a Tom Baker series show.
Yes.
And I think there's more than one part to it. In fact, there's 4 parts to the original Pirate Planet story.
Yeah.
And what I did find really interesting, and of course this kind of bounces around a little bit in the book, but we've already spoken about one of the other 2 Doctor Who stories that we're going to be talking about in this book.
Yes.
That's Shada, of course.
Right.
The other one is City of Death.
Right.
And you're going to tell us a little bit more about that in a minute, I'm sure. But what I found really interesting is later in the book, they mention the fact that all of the Doctor Who books, which I have like 100 of them, I didn't realize that those 3 stories were never put to a novelization.
Oh.
Because they could never come to an agreement with Douglas Adams about how that would happen and who would do the writing and that kind of thing.
So of all the Doctor Who novelizations that you can't have any of them by Douglas Adams because they were never done.
Exactly. Isn't that sad? I mean, it's crazy. I literally have hundreds of them. And
I
we've
do
talked about
think
them
they were done
before.
after the fact.
Oh, yes, definitely. Definitely. They're just little short books. They're definitely what I call a bathroom book.
Right. But I mean, today, there are full novels, I believe, of all three of those stories. The way we did
Oh.
Doctor Who and the Cricket Men, I think that same author may have also done Pirate Planet, City of Death, and Shada.
Neat.
I'm not 100% positive if it was him, but I do think I've seen them somewhere in my travels. And after Cricket Men, I kind of went, no, I don't want to.
Yeah. And they wouldn't have been written by or even approved by Douglas Adams because it would have all been posthumously.
Correct.
There were two things of note that I thought were interesting about the City of Death Doctor Who series.
Okay.
One is, and I think we kind of hinted at this when we talked about the Starship Titanic. Well, maybe we didn't talk about it, but we should have because we didn't really realize it was a reference until later.
Right.
But in the City of Death, there's actually 7 Mona Lisas referenced or shown as part of that show.
Okay.
One of them has a little sticker underneath that says, "This is a fake." So now we know why the Mona Lisa picture was sitting in that closet that was staring at us and
Right.
flipping back and forth between smiling and laughing. And of course, the other part of the story of the City of Death, which I thought was interesting, is it is about an exploded spaceship. Again, not missing his opportunity to recycle an idea.
Absolutely not. So we were talking about learning a little bit about Douglas Adams' daily life and his personalities. And here was something that I kind of was a little bit disappointed in, but completely understand. When they were discussing turning the radio series into a book, with a sort of off-the-cuff suggestion, Douglas Adams asked his friend John Lloyd if he wanted to write the book together. And John Lloyd loved that idea, but then Douglas changed his mind and said, I think I need to do this on my own. And
Right.
I'm glad it wasn't a collaboration. I'm glad it was all Douglas. But to throw out there to somebody, hey, do you want to do this? And then go, nope, don't. I'm taking it back. That was a little disappointing, yet understandable.
Right, and what I thought was odd and funny, and certainly it indicates the kind of depth of friendship that the two of them had, was not only did he do that, he had a conversation with him, and they were talking about doing it together. Then he went back home, sent him the letter saying, no, I think I'll do it myself. And then immediately following the letter, they go on vacation together.
Right.
They go to Greece together. They spend a week or more at, in these bars and stuff, hanging out and having fun. And that's when the two of them came up with the concept of the book, which we have not spoken about. At least I don't think we've ever mentioned it. The Meaning of Life.
The Meaning of Life, yes. I don't know if we've ever mentioned it in passing. If we have, it was a very brief thing.
And I believe that this is something that we're going to have to dig into as well. Because obviously it's got the humor of Douglas Adams in it. I'm not 100% sure that we're going to understand it or know how to present it as a podcast, because it's framed up more like an urban dictionary.
Oh, yes. It's everything that doesn't have a term or a word, they gave a term or a word. So
Right.
funny, different things.
Right. It'll be interesting. I think the two of us are going to have to review that book together separately and then figure out if there's a way we can maybe serialize it and add it part of additional broadcasting going forward or something.
Yeah, if we're going to do that book, I can't imagine it would be anything other than saying, this is what the book is, and here are some of our favorites.
So as it was going and Douglas was writing Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, he got together with his publisher, Pan, and was discussing with them the possibility of having someone write a little blurb for the cover of the book.
Yes.
And he lists in this book some of the responses that he got from his friends requesting blurbs to be used in the book. And the first one was, the funniest book I've ever read today, Terry Jones.
And then another one is, every word is a gem. It's only the order they're put in that worries me. Terry Jones.
Another Terry Jones blurb, space age comedy for everyone, except for insert the name of the man who writes worse poetry than the Vogons and whose name I can't remember. Terry Jones.
Probably the funniest book in the universe. Terry Jones. Footnote, dictated by Douglas Adams.
One of the funniest books ever to have quoted what I said about it on the cover. Terry Jones.
So Terry Jones was just writing lots of little blurbs for
Yeah,
him.
I guess. But then there's two different ones from two other people.
Well, in the end, it says, the only quotes that were used in some press releases were, really entertaining and fun, John Cleese.
And it changed my whole life. It's literally out of this world. Tom Baker.
So poor Terry sent all those in, and none of them got used.
Didn't even get a hit, you know.
And honestly, how boring are the ones that they did use?
I know. They seem to have bigger names, you know.
Yes.
Then I also like the note that Douglas wrote to his booksellers when they reached 185,000 copies.
Okay.
I can only assume that you have all been giving away pound notes with every copy of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Or possibly even sending press gangs out into the streets, because I have just been officially notified that the sales have now passed the point of being merely absurd and have now moved into the realm of ludicrous.
Right.
Whatever you've been doing to get rid of them, thank you very much. Oh, gosh. What tickles me the most about that is I'm still looking forward to it. And what a teaser the other day. I think I fell right into the little gap here. I sent you a text the other day because I got so excited about a date coming up close. It was April the 23rd.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. April the 23rd, the greatest thing in the world's going to happen. And it took me 3 days to realize that it wasn't April 23rd, 2026. It was April 23rd, 2027.
Right.
When Spaceballs 2, the movie, is coming out.
The new one.
The new one. And here is a joke that was reused in Spaceballs. They went from absurd to ludicrous speed.
Yes. Yes, they did.
Oh, I love it. So one of the next things that they discuss within the book is the production of stage plays that were created based on Hitchhiker's Guide, the radio show.
Yes.
And I just couldn't help myself. I wrote this note, and I just think that the response to the plays are something that you and I should share with our audience.
Right.
So I'll get us started here, okay?
All right.
Then the show opened. In retrospect, this may have been a mistake. Such descriptions as, I cannot imagine a more tedious way to spend an evening. Daily Mail.
Clumsy without ever being cheerful. Time out.
Embarrassing. The Observer.
Never ending and extremely boring. Standard.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. And a fairly average example of put-downs that they have here by Michael Billingston in The Guardian that stated, what happened on the Rainbow stage is certainly inculcate and barely comprehensible. Ken Campbell has directed this junk opera, and I can only say he gave us infinitely more fun in the days of his roadshow, when the highlight used to be a man suffering a ferret down his trousers. So I'm assuming that the play didn't go over very well.
No, it doesn't sound like it did. So I didn't write this down, but it sounded like there were multiple stage plays all being produced at the same time by different people.
There were, yes.
So was it 3?
I think it was 3. I don't know that the third one actually got on stage. I think 2 of the 3 did. And, I mean, the descriptions of the audience being in some kind of moving carriage that slid around.
It was weird. It was weird. And what it sounded like is that the one that got the least amount of exposure was by far the best one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It did sound that way.
So we'll move on to something else here. And I found this interesting because we always talk about Douglas Adams' love for his favorite material, and he will always find a way to work it in elsewhere. The second radio series is its own thing. That storyline started and ended there, and it's not part of anything else. It's just its own entity. Some things from that have made appearances elsewhere, but it was pointed out in this book that body debit cards and the robot disco have made appearances nowhere else. So he could not find a way to work either of those two in to anything that he has done. But, only if he had more time, we would have body debit cards and robot discos.
Oh my gosh.
So we did an episode about the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy records, which were re-recordings of material for an album. The 2 albums were not the only Hitchhiker's connected records, though. There were also 2 singles released by Marvin the Paranoid Android, Stephen Moore.
I love it.
These were Marvin, 10 million logic functions, maybe more. They make me pick up paper off the floor. You know what really makes me mad? They clean me with a Brillo pad. A car wash wouldn't be so bad. Solitary solenoid, terminally paranoid Marvin. I mean, where was that during our poetry episode?
I don't know.
How come we didn't come across this first before we did our poetry? Because, oh my goodness.
Yeah, they were released by Stephen Moore, these Marvin stories. Or Marvin songs.
Right. And then there was one called Metal Man, about a spaceship out of control, trapped in a black hole, trying to persuade Marvin to rescue it. And it got a limited amount of airplay and made it into the lower reaches of the British charts.
Oh my gosh.
And then there was one called Reasons to be Miserable. An excerpt from that song is, Give my brain a pain, very little turns me on, Marvin is my name.
My gosh.
A titular parody of Ian Drury's Reasons to be Cheerful, Marvin, I Love You, the story of Marvin's clean out of old data tapes, discovering a love message. Marvin, I love you. Remember, I'm programmed for you. I guess they're a weird combination of narrative over electropop and 50s love song.
Mm-hmm.
That one got very limited airplay and didn't do very much at all.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, Douglas Adams acted as a consultant on the songs.
Oh, neat.
And when asked about them, would play a sweet lullaby on one of his many guitars. Marvin's song from Life, the Universe, and Everything with a tune by Douglas, maintaining that he always thought they should have released that as a single. But that song from Marvin, oh man, that made our poetry edition.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely.
How I Hate the Night, is that what it was called?
Yep. Oh my gosh. And I was remembering when I was reading this part of the chapters that I actually had, or have, I can't quite find it, a copy of that album. The red one with the yellow duck on it. I know I had it, but I can't seem to find it anymore, so I think I got lost to the translation.
The red one with the yellow duck on it is the second...
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I owned it.
Okay, I thought you were talking about you had Marvin singles.
Oh, no, I wish I did, but I I remember very vividly in my collection that I had that copy of that album. And in fact, when I was over at my son's house the other day, he's saying, oh yeah, I remember you had that. And I'm like, what the heck did I do with those? But since I moved, I think I might have permanently released them to the world.
Oh, well, somebody found something very nice in a garage sale.
Yep, absolutely.
But I do have my copy. So I have
great.
got the radio series on the Rubber Duck edition.
Right. So after that, they talk about the TV show. And I was really surprised by some of the information that they mentioned here in this particular chapter. I would have to actually go back because one of the things that I'm sure we missed, I know I must have missed it, was there was a great deal more detail in the graphic scenes that showed the graphics and talked about the book and that kind of stuff that we must have missed. There were a bunch of phone numbers of places where you could get a Pan-Galactic Gargle Blaster. And apparently these phone numbers were real numbers for bars. And there was a couple of numbers for where you can recover from having drunk a Pan-Galactic Gargle Blaster.
Yes.
Like self-help groups and that kind of thing. But they were real phone numbers.
Yeah, they had a lot of stuff in there that you could not possibly catch in 1, 2, 3, or even 4 viewings.
Right.
Talking about graphics, John Lloyd was a junior producer, and he was responsible for bringing Hitchhikers to the TV. He was also producing Not the 9 O'Clock News at the time. When Not the 9 O'Clock News gained in popularity, they pulled him from Hitchhikers, and Alan Bell became the producer. And John Lloyd then became an associate producer, even though he really didn't do much because he was doing Not the 9 O'Clock News. Apparently, there's this little riff between Alan Bell and John Lloyd, and even though he says it is not intentional, in the opening credits, John Lloyd, his name shoots off into the distance and explodes.
Nothing intentional about that.
No, purely a coincidence.
Purely. So one of the things that they mentioned a good deal about, actually, so I'll just kind of shorten it up here a bit. But obviously, when we watched the TV show, one of the things that was dreadful was Zaphod's second head.
Yes, absolutely.
And what was interesting about that in this particular book is they mention a pretty good deal about how expensive the thing was and how much of it was actually animated. I mean, it had functions that were never working.
Right.
Which might have made it seem like a much more effective prosthetic. But it was very heavy, it was hard to wear, and it never functioned the way they expected it to.
No.
And of course, this kind of relates back to a lot of what they mention here in this particular book is that The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, having been written originally as a radio series, works best in radio.
Yes.
And in a book form, because a book form, of course, is just another form of radio. You just hear it in your head.
Right.
So it talks a lot about the challenges of putting this show into real life.
Yes.
Another little piece of Zaphod's kit, which I didn't ever see, and now I'd have to actually watch it again.
I know what you're going to mention, and I heard about it. I didn't believe it. I don't know who I heard it from, where they found the information. Evidently, it could have been here, but I have watched and looked, and I have not ever noticed. But how good are the recordings from that era? But go ahead.
Oh, that's
Tell
true.
us.
That's true.
Tell us about Zaphod's two heads.
Yeah. Well, apparently they suggested he had 4 heads.
Okay.
And they mentioned that he had 2 flies. One of them was zippered and the other was buttoned.
Right, did not notice.
And it was designed to imply that he had a double trouser mouse.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
What I found interesting, and I don't know what they were using for the prosthetic, if it was just a sausage or some sort of a cylinder of some kind, but evidently the first version that they shoved down his pants was 9 inches long. And and somebody went, no, we just can't. And so they cut it down to 6 inches.
Yeah, that's hysterical. That's hysterical. And of course, I didn't realize this either, and I don't know that either one of us mentioned this, but in the scene on the TV show where the Earth is about to explode and then explodes.
Right.
Of course, Douglas Adams is in that scene. He's sitting there as a patron at the bar.
Right.
In one part of the scene. And then later in that show, he takes off all his clothes and runs naked into the sea.
Yes. He's given up.
And what's funny is that they suggest that there's an unedited version that shows a little bit more of Douglas Adams than you imagine.
Oh, well, that version I have not seen.
I don't know that it actually exists, but it is funny to read about.
So, Zaphod's second head and its being inoperable most of the time is very memorable from the TV series. But what I've heard before, what we may have discussed, I don't know. I don't think we've talked about it much here, but it's worth reiterating. Alan Bell, the guy that took over after John Lloyd, was responsible for Arthur wearing the dressing gown.
Mm-hmm.
The TV series is the first place it was ever shown or mentioned. After that, Douglas wrote it into Life, the Universe, and everything. So he wrote 2 novels where he never, ever had Arthur change clothes.
Right.
So Alan Bell just went, well, he must still be in his dressing gown because he just woke up.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Right.
Douglas never thought about it. And then all of a sudden, the TV show comes out, and Arthur's walking around in his dressing gown all the time. He's like, crap.
And they did talk about that a little later in the book also, about the fact that when he gets on the Heart of Gold, that he is provided a different costume.
Yeah, it's a silvery jumpsuit.
Yeah, exactly. And then where is it in? It's in the movie, I guess, where they talk about him being given a pair of a set of clothes that school boy's outfit.
That was not in the movie. That was in. I'm almost embarrassed to say that is going to be And Another Thing
In the book.
Mm-hmm. Because he's on a ship with, and then Fenchurch is providing him a new set of clothes. I mean, it was weird. So
yes.
So we don't talk about that. No. we are not deniers that it exists, but but it's not truly Douglas Adams canon.
Right.
Another thing I found interesting when they were talking about the TV series is it was said that it should be noted that most of the really important pieces of casting in Hitchhikers seem to have been done by secretaries.
Yes.
Whether this phenomenon is unique to Hitchhikers or whether it is extant throughout the entertainment industry has not been adequately investigated. And it's pretty funny how they go on and on about different things where it's always a secretary's suggestion that gets the best cast member.
Absolutely. That was hysterical. Just to mention in this particular part of the discussion, one of the things I really appreciate about the way this book was written, and I will say that I've always been a fan of Neil Gaiman as an author, but I really like the way he puts footnotes into this particular book. There's a lot of footnotes, and there's a bunch of ancillary information at the back of the book as well. I love how he spikes the little footnotes in his jokes and stuff throughout the book.
Yes. I liked in the TV show when they were talking about Magrathea.
Mm-hmm.
So for the scenes on Magrathea, most of the cast and crew have memories of the Comish clay pit. And some of these memories have to do with the fact that there were no toilets down there. Others have to do with David Lerner, the actor inside of Marvin, who, due to the length of time it took to get in and out of the Marvin costume, was abandoned in the clay pit during the occasional rain showers during filming. And they protected him from rust by an umbrella.
Yep. Imagine the guy that had to hold the umbrella.
Maybe he did. He had working hands.
Oh my God.
Here's your umbrella here.
Mm-hmm. I still love that Easter egg, because it's the Marvin in the TV show is in the movie.
Yes.
Standing in the line.
In the queue, yeah.
Yeah. I just love that. I absolutely love that.
And then here's another little piece that is, I don't want to say upsetting, but understandable. And it has to do with the, I want this to be mine and nobody else's. So John Lloyd was a co-writer for some of the episodes of the radio series.
Mm-hmm.
And the bit about the black ship belonging to the Haganenon fleet,
mm-hmm.
when the records were made and the TV series was made, Douglas did not want to use anything that was written by John Lloyd.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how Disaster Area was created.
Right.
As for who the black ship belonged to.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, a little bit petty maybe, but it's that I don't want anybody else's ideas infiltrating this, so I'm going to take out.
Well, you can remove that bit of knowledge from your brain.
Yeah, right.
Oh my gosh.
And then in this book, it is briefly said that the restaurant at the end of the universe is Douglas Adams's favorite of the Hitchhiker's books. Mm-hmm. And that's it. Nothing about why. It was just, this is my favorite one. And then we just have to go, okay, but a little explanation would have been nice.
Yep.
Oddly enough, the only part that British critics found too highly Monty Python and too down to earth about the restaurant at the end of the universe was the colonization of the earth by the Golga Frinchum detritus. He said, oddly enough, because this is the section most American critics picked up on the most easily and singled out for praise. So British critics hated the part that the Americans liked the most.
I love that. Right at the end of the chapter, there's a scene that was cut from the TV script, and I thought it was funny, so I thought I'd read this to you.
Okay.
And it's our friend Marvin.
Marvin
turns from the teleport and trudges away, and mutters, as he frequently does, I suppose some people might have expected better treatment after having waited for 576,000 million years in a car park. But not me. I may just be a menial robot, but I'm far too intelligent to expect anyone to think of me for a moment. Far too intelligent. In fact, I'm so intelligent, I've probably got time to go through the 5 million things I hate the most about organic life forms. 1. They're so stupid. Oh my gosh. So they go on to talk about the release of the book in America, etc., and how it had already become very popular in England. But what I thought was really fascinating, and boy, I wish I had seen this, is apparently the Rolling Stone magazine had an issue on August the 20th, and they gave away 3,000 copies of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy for free.
Wow.
For the first people to write to the Hyperspace Hitchhiking Club, Earth Division, care of Pocket Books. Man, wouldn't you have loved to have a copy of that? I wondered if they had a letter or something included with it,
Right.
To me, that would be a neat little collectible. Although I'm sure I don't need another one.
Right. Hey, you always need another one.
Oh, yeah, that's absolutely true.
You're in your forever home now. You're not moving again.
That's right. And the book, of course, was released in October of that year.
The promotion to the American audience of this new book was pretty funny, because even though Douglas Adams had a very inconsequential impact on Monty Python, he had one script drastically rewritten, and he had 2 small walk-on parts. The promotion for his book leaned heavily on those credentials, like he was part of the Python writing crew. And the publisher Pocket also promoted that they were from the same country that brought the Beatles.
Yep.
So,
and I just love this. In the 1980 October 80 version, apparently that was released here in the United States by Harmony Crown. They have the following praises in this book.
Okay.
Really entertaining and fun, John Cleese.
Much funnier than anything John Cleese has ever written, Terry Jones.
I know for a fact that John Cleese hasn't read it, Graham Chapman.
Who is John Cleese? Eric Idle.
Really entertaining and fun, Michael Palin.
Bookends.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, it is absolutely hysterical. I can't even listen to John Cleese without starting to laugh.
So next we're going to talk about the life, the universe, and everything. And it seems that in the life, the universe, and everything, Douglas Adams had to write and rewrite the opening scene that ended up with them at Lord's Cricket Grounds. He says that it seems inconsequential or illogical, and it is something we have to accept. So he had to get the rhythm correct. He also mentions Ford having to talk about eddies in the space-time continuum, which he admitted was a silly joke. But he forgave himself for it, but I still haven't.
Oh, come on. I know. It's not really a pun. It's wordplay.
Yeah. When Life, the Universe, and Everything was released, the critical response was far less favorable than that for the first 2 books. And most of the critics said similar things. The third time around, I found Arthur Dent and his ridiculous dressing gown. Why hasn't he found a change of clothes somewhere along the line? Increasingly tedious. Never a very substantial hero, he is in danger of being shriveled in the heat of his author's imagination. Perhaps Adams should now look beyond science fiction. I feel that his cynicism and detachment are too strong for a genre which depends so much on naivete and trust. Kelvin Johnson, The Observer.
And we read another review goes, the humor depends on a limited repartee of gimmicks, and this 3rd volume, though by no means lacking in enthusiastic drive, does little to suggest that the idea could or should be taken much further from here. Richard Brown, The Times Literary Supplement.
And then lastly, fans will relish the mixture as before, but signs of padding and self-parody suggest that Adams would be wise to avoid a 4th. Marvin Hillman, Tribune.
Little do they know. Little do they know.
Little do they know.
Some of the information in the book is a little convoluted. It kind of goes back and forth in time. But
right.
Here, in this particular section of the book, there's a cut scene from the first radio series script.
Okay.
And I thought it was pretty funny. It's 2, and that's one of the characters. I guess it's the interviewer. And Room Fondle.
Okay.
As we know, one of the ones who objects to deep thought.
Yes.
And 2 goes, what are you talking about? Professional ethics? And Room Fondle goes, look, don't you mess with me about ethics. Let me tell you that I have got 3 first-class degrees in moral sciences, ethics and further ethics, a PhD in a lot further ethics, and have even written 3 best-selling books on why sex is ethical, why more sex is ethical, and 573 more totally ethical positions. So I know what I'm talking about when I say that ethically, that machine is a write-off. Get rid of it. I love the fact that they include some of these cut scenes, because where would we actually have heard about them?
Right.
So they're talking about the meaning of life, the Monty Python movie.
Right.
And here it's funny because there's a reference, of course, to the meaning of life. The movie's title sequence shows the title carved in classically modern Terry Gilliam fashion into a huge slab of rock.
Right.
Initially reading the meaning of lift.
Oh, yeah.
A lightning bolt adds to the bottom bar of the final E. It was merely a coincidence.
Yes.
Discovered by Douglas and Terry Jones slightly before the release of either of their products, but too late for anything to be changed. Merely a coincidence.
Yes. And it was a coincidence, but if you wish to concoct conspiracy theories, and what does happen in the 42nd minute of the film, then go right ahead. Oh, man, there's so much of Douglas's works that get overanalyzed.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to jump to the movie, and having seen the movie, it is surprising that there is one idea that Douglas Adams had that he wanted to initially include, and that was the battle tank that Marvin encountered on the bridge. How great would that have been to see that scene in the movie?
Oh, I know. That would have been great.
He mentions it as one of his favorite new things that he had come up with, and he was unhappy that he had never sussed out what it looked like. So he wanted this battle tank to have many legs. Right. And like an octopus, each of its legs would have subsidiary brain. And after it fell and smashed to bits, the only thing that would have some kind of independent existence would be one of its legs. He knew it would not make it into the movie because it was detachable from an already too long script. So when you've got something that's too long, what is a standalone? That would have been out.
Right.
And then this is something that I have never heard. Douglas Adams does a lot of ultra things, and he had an idea for a character called the Ultra Walrus with an embarrassing past. He got the idea after watching Let It Be and feeling very sorry for this obviously very embarrassed policeman having to go and make the Beatles stop playing. He thought that somebody would be so mortified that they would do anything not to be in this embarrassing position. So he created the character of someone who was placed in such an embarrassing position, one he hated so much that he would just want not to be there. He said the thought goes through his mind, I would do anything rather than to do what I have to do now. Whereupon someone appears and says to him, look, you have the option to either go and do this thing you don't want to do, or I can offer you a life on a completely different planet. So he opts to go and be this strange sort of walrus creature. The reason he made it a walrus was when Gary Day Ellison, who designed the cover, showed him a lenticular picture he created, and Douglas Adams thought he might as well make him a walrus. Gary always designs a cover that can clearly not have any function in relation to the book. And if Douglas Adams still had a chance, he'd try and work it in somehow. Not that it ever actually happened that way. In November, the book was released in England and America. The English cover was all black with a lenticular picture of a dinosaur that changed into a walrus and vice versa, stuck on the front. There are no dinosaurs or walruses in So Long and Thanks for All the Fish. The American cover marginally more logically showed some leaping dolphins. There are no dolphins in So Long and Thanks for All the Fish. But there are more dolphins than there are walruses or dinosaurs. So, oh man. So that was a long way to say that I have never seen a cover that has a lenticular picture of a dinosaur changing into a walrus. Have you?
No, I've never seen.
I can't even imagine what that is worth.
I know. That would be neat.
So a question Douglas Adams was asked about So Long and Thanks for All the Fish was, why weren't the expected characters in the book? And he answered, partly because they didn't fit, and partly because I didn't want to do them. It was like a chore, people were saying. Let's have a Zaphod bit. And I didn't feel like doing a Zaphod bit. And this leads to the attitude he had of, I am not going to buckle down to the wishes of the fans. Here he says that attitude came across in the book to its detriment. Most obviously in chapter 25, where, having asked, somewhat rhetorically, whether or not Arthur Dent ever indulges in the pleasures of the senses, other than flying and drinking tea, Douglas comments, those who wish to know should read on. Others may wish to skip to the last chapter, which is a good bit and has Marvin in it. Douglas Adams thought it was patronizing and unfair, and undoubtedly would have been cut from a later draft of the manuscript had there been one. I personally really liked that breaking of the fourth wall, or whatever it's called in a novel.
Yeah, there you go.
Because it gives us a peek into the mind of Douglas Adams and what he's going through. And I didn't find it patronizing, probably because I wanted to read on. I wasn't one of those that wanted to jump to the end of the book.
Absolutely.
And I guess that since I was not hoping for Zaphod, so to speak, I was not offended at all by the passage, and I got a kick out of knowing that it was aimed at the fans that just wanted more Marvin, who aren't the real fans.
Right. Oh, gosh.
So I find it funny that Douglas Adams felt bad about including one of my favorite parts of that book.
Yeah, that's funny. Well, it's also an indication. When I think about that particular line in that particular book, it takes me to Salmon of the Doubt, where he's bouncing back and forth between perspectives. And he seems to do that at leisure, but he really didn't do that much in his writing. So I was curious as to where it might have gone if we had seen Salmon of Doubt come to fruition.
Right.
I don't know whether he would have cleaned it all up and made it first, second, third person or whatever, but he seemed to enjoy the idea of bouncing back and forth. And at one point in this book, they talk about the fact that the Dirk Gently books seem a little disjointed because they don't have a narrator in the story. So they can't, narrate parts of the story.
Right.
But even there, they did sort of narrate it, because there's the scene where he talks about hypnotizing Richard and getting the whole story, quote unquote.
Right.
So there's like a little narration part stuck in there, but stays true to the character of the book. So then they go on to talk about the computer game. And what I thought was interesting in here is there's some of the excerpts of what the interactive language that was included in the game. But I thought it was funny because I don't know how many times you would have had to play or how many scenes you would have had to go over and over and over again to get all the different pieces of language that was in there. But one that I thought was particularly interesting is mentioned here in this book, and it's on one of the many deaths of Arthur Dent. Your serious allergic reaction to protein loss from the matter transfer beam becomes a cause celeb among various holistic pressure groups in the galaxy and leads to a total ban on dematerialization. Within 50 years, space travel is replaced by a keen interest in old furniture restoration and market gardening. In this new, quieter galaxy, the art of telepathy flourishes as never before, creating a new universal harmony which brings all life together, converting all matter into thought, and brings about the rebirth of the entire universe on a higher and better plane of existence. However, none of this affects you because you're dead.
Right. And I guess later in the game, when you've obtained a copy of the guide, you can consult it on a number of subjects, and one of them is fluff. And fluff, for example, fluff is interesting stuff. A deadly poison on Bodega Minor, a diet staple of Frazzlin 5, the unit of currency on the moons of the Blurfoid system, and the major crop of the laundry supplies planet Blastus 111. One ancient legend claims that 4 pieces of fluff lie scattered around the galaxy, each forming 1/4 of the seedling of a tree with amazing properties. The sole survivor of the tropical planet Fuzzball. The ultimate source of fluff is still a mystery, with the scientific community divided between the big lint bang theory and the white lint hole theory.
Oh, man. I love it.
So I wanted to point this out in the book because I guess you felt more this way like Douglas did. When Douglas Adams was asked about novelizing the Doctor Who episodes, he said that he would not mind turning them into books at some point, except for Shada, which he does not think is a very good story. He also believes that it's only gained notoriety because it does not exist. He did say that he does not want anyone else to novelize his Doctor Who episodes. At this point, there's no other choice. So, would you rather?
Oh, gosh. Well, the answer to that, is yes, because of our fandom. But it would be interesting to see, because there's always a twist. A little later on in this part of the book, they talk about some of the fan mail that Douglas Adams got, and I loved reading some of the fan mail that he got here. But my absolute favorite one kind of just seems like something I can definitely relate to. And it's, "Dear Mr. Adams, you're weird. Or at least your writing is weird. And that's okay by me. I'm a little weird myself. If you are really one of those terribly dull people who just writes weird, please keep it a secret. I hate being disillusioned."
Yeah. See, some people just can say exactly what everybody's feeling.
Right. Live in your illusion. Live in your illusion, man. I love it. So a little later on, they're talking about various pieces here. And again, the reason I thought this was interesting is because it's the third time I've seen mentioned the author P.G. Wodehouse. Definitely is an influencer on Douglas Adams, and I think there's something interesting there. I think we ought to take an opportunity, or maybe perhaps I'll take the opportunity in seeing if I can read some of his material so we can understand how he might have influenced Douglas himself.
Yeah. The next thing I want to talk about is a little bit of the book Last Chance to See. And I like this line about organizing their trips for the writing of that book. It says, "Once they had decided where they were going to go, and in search of which animals, all they had to do was arrange a time. This was not to prove an easy task. But by May 1988, after a year of anxious juggling and rearranging, the pair were ready to probe the darker recesses of man's inhumanity to everything else he shares the planet with," which is a pretty good description of what that book is about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Beyond that, they start to talk about the construction and preparation for the illustrated version of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which we have covered on our podcast.
Yes.
That's the one where we did the video, so they could see the books and stuff that we were looking at. But what interested me the most about this, and this is kind of funny, it just happened by accident. You know that I'm watching the Star Trek series, trying to watch it from beginning to end, every single episode, chronologically as they were shown, I guess.
Right.
But I happen to also want to watch other science fiction-y stuff. And I do think it's funny to go back and look at some of the more campy stuff. And I happened to start watching about a month ago a TV series called Space 1999. The moon gets blown away from the Earth and it's traveling through space. And it's got Martin Landau in it. But what I thought was interesting about that is apparently the model designer for Space 1999 was the one who designed the pages in the illustrated version of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Oh, okay, yes.
So it was another one of those happy little accidents.
Yes.
Quite interesting.
And they mentioned the making of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Oh, yes.
And this is something that's included on the DVDs that I have. And
Great.
Sadly, I've not yet watched it.
Oh,
and that sounds like a future episode.
Oh, 100%. It sounds like something we're going to have to dig into. I was quite curious about that when I saw it in this book. I wasn't aware that it existed until I read it here.
It was originally a 90-minute feature, and it was released on a video as a standalone property.
Mm-hmm.
And I found this bit very easy to relate to. The first batch of videos of the making of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy had a major fault with the soundtrack.
Oh, really?
With the result that Peter Jones's narration is missing in several places. And was swiftly recalled. A few were sold, though, and, depending on your point of view, are either A, important collector's items, or B, defective.
Well, some days that's the way I feel. I'm either an important collector or defective.
Defective, yes. Sometimes both at the same time.
Exactly. These two things can exist in the same space.
Yes. We did cover the comic books, and I found this interesting when they were talking about the comics in this book. The writer of the comic book was John Carnell, and it has been said that Douglas Adams is not a fan of the comic books.
Right.
Well, evidently, Douglas Adams oversaw but was not actively involved in its creation. So, there was no adjusting the story specifically for this medium. And the fans seem to have issues to it. Like this. Leia Loa's artwork met with general disdain. Clean, crisp, and colorful though it was, to a generation of science fiction fans raised on the gritty imagery of 2000 AD, the pages of the Hitchhiker's comic were simply too, well, clean, crisp, and colorful. Zaphod was a bleached blonde beach bum, and the Vogons looked like large humanoid toads. Ford was overly oddball rather than just slightly disconcerting.
Right.
The Babelfish didn't look like anything you would want near your head, let alone in your ear. Arthur was clearly far, far too young, and Marvin seemed to be an extraordinary expressionless robo-waiter. The only aspects where the comic design scored over that of the TV series were Trillian, a brunette, and flowing Arabic-style dresses.
Right.
And Zaphod's second head, which at least looked alive. So it points out a little more of what we kind of talked about during the first comic book series, is that because Douglas was not involved, he couldn't do anything with the story to make it better fit the comic book format. So they just had to do what was written, and it did suffer for it. And then, do you remember when H2G2 appeared on the internet?
I don't. It's surprising to me that I don't, but I don't.
Oh, man. I was one of the first people, well, not one of the first to sign up, but when I heard about it, I immediately signed up. So this was spawned from Douglas Adams' desire to make The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Internet, but it wasn't just a search engine for the web. Instead, it was an attempt to create a global repository of knowledge. Serious, irreverent, essential, or arcane, which could be read by anyone, and more importantly, written by anyone.
I love it.
To
The
me, it sounds a
Wikipedia
lot
of
like
its time.
Wikipedia.
Yep,
Exactly.
absolutely. Yep, you got it.
know?
Well, the Wikipedia comic version, which would probably be a lot better.
Yes. Yes. H2G2 was a sort of microcosm of the internet, on the internet, strangely redolent of Zarniwoop's creation of an artificial universe in his office in the second radio series. By December 1999, with exactly 2 weeks left to go in the 20th century, a constantly updated databank of information and opinion from thousands roving researchers was available anywhere in the world via a small handheld device.
Right.
Okay, so nobody was selling mobile phones with the words "Don't Panic" in large friendly letters on it, But other than that, it was a remarkable thing to happen.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially to a writer who had always been at pains to point out that his science fiction stories were in no way meant to be predictive. So that is why I like his introduction to H2G2.com.
Mm-hmm.
I really didn't foresee the internet, but then neither did the computer industry. Not that that tells us very much, of course. The computer industry didn't even foresee that the century was going to end. So, do you remember Y2K?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I was in the computer industry at the time.
People didn't even want to fly
Right.
because the plane was just going to drop out of the sky.
Yeah, they were convinced of it.
But nothing drastic happened because they got everything that they needed to fixed.
Mm-hmm.
So we get to the point in the book where they mention that Douglas Adams died.
Mm-hmm. A sad page.
He suffered a fatal heart attack while exercising in his gym.
Well, that's why I never exercise.
Yes. On May 11th, 2001, It was observed by one fan that, with an irony Douglas Adams would have loved, right at the very end, he at least knew precisely where his towel was.
Yep.
And I also like the blessing given by Reverend Anthony Hurst at Douglas Adams' memorial service. Jesus said, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted." Ford Prefect said, "What I need now is a strong drink and a peer group."
Oh, yes.
Oh,
Tough.
yes. I have known that Douglas Adams and Richard Dawkins admired each other and were close friends. I did not know that Douglas introduced Richard to his future wife, Layla Ward, who played the Doctor's companion Romana, while Douglas was a script editor for Doctor Who.
Interesting.
So I found that to be a little piece of weird information.
Yep.
And then Towel Day was started on May 25th, 2001, 2 weeks after Douglas Adams' death. In 2009, Douglas's UK publishers, Pan Macmillan, got involved co-organizing a competition with Sci-Fi Now magazine to reward the most creative towel user who posted a photograph of themselves to online image library Flickr. I felt this next bit was very reminiscent of Douglas Adams' writing, so that's why I included it.
Sure.
A set of Hitchhiker's books, reprinted to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the first novel, was up for grabs, as well as a Sony e-reader for not reading them on.
I love it.
So the winner got a set of novels and an e-reader that you can't read the books on. And then back to talking about Shada and some other Doctor Who episodes, I found this passage fitting. Because while they were talking about the recreation of Shada and the other Doctor Who episodes, it is an accepted fact that technology supersedes itself at a rate capable of bankrupting all but the wealthiest of consumers.
Betamax.
Yes. In accordance with this rule, the new millennium saw collectors all over the world binning their VHS tapes and replacing them with the same films, but on nice, shiny discs. The BBC's comprehensive collection of Doctor Who titles have steadily been re-released in the DVD format, bringing a handful of features of interest to Douglas Adams fans. Douglas's most celebrated story, The City of Death, received double disc treatment in 2005. So we're going to have to get City of Death like you were talking about earlier. It's a double disc.
That's another one. So here, after the passing, they have a chapter that talks about a little bit more about Dirk Maggs. And I think you and I have praised him on a number of occasions, and I'm going to continue to praise him here.
Yes.
He says of the Hitchhiker's Guide, radio should be proud of Hitchhikers. It's probably the biggest thing that happened since the Goon Show. And that was the biggest thing since Station 2LO and Savoy Hill. Now, that's probably high praise, but I gotta say, I have no idea what he's talking about.
Right. Yes.
But what I did want to mention about Dirk Maggs is they talk about him in this book throughout the book in different sections. And they mentioned that he gets involved with the radio show and that he is, in fact, a writer. His original career trajectory, he imagined himself getting involved with radio and then moving on to TV or movies or that kind of thing. But then he realized, of course, that radio was a better fit for him because it gives him the kind of freedom that he needs or wants. The creativity is unlimited in radio because you don't have to worry about the visual creation of what you're trying to relate. Mm-hmm. And I'm still very impressed because he mentions at one point within this book that he, in fact, is a writer. So he understood the rigors of writing and he understood the glorious ability of radio to tell a story. And I'm grateful that he was able to intersect with Douglas Adams because it's through him that we get some of the best representation of Douglas Adams's work.
Yes.
So I was excited to read more about him and his part of the story.
So now we're going to get to some just random things that I found interesting with no real ties to anything. Like, I guess I didn't know that there were 2 asteroids in the asteroid belt with Hitchhiker's connections. On January 25th, 2005, asteroid 2001 DA42 was announced. And in 2001, the week Douglas Adams died, the IAU announced the naming of asteroid 18610, discovered in 1998 by Felix Hormuth of the Starkenberg Observatory in Germany. They named it Arthur Dent.
I love it.
We did an episode about the Dirk Gently stage play because I was lucky enough to see a small community theater do it.
Right.
James Goss and Arvind Ethan David co-wrote the Dirk Gently stage play while in school, and it has been adapted and brought to bigger stages. The one thing that bugged me about the play was foreseen by James Goss. He said, "So, Dirk continues, blissfully. Although, I think of all the business about the answering machines with the tapes in them, and I feel a little worried." Because, yes, the big plot point was an answering machine, and there's no real way to change that. So they just go through and ignore it. It's kind of I did want to put a couple of things that I found interesting in the appendixes.
Okay. And there's a lot of stuff in there, yeah.
One of them was on creating Fenchurch.
Oh, okay.
She isn't based on any particular person, but on a number of different thoughts or observations of people or incidents. It was a bit of a parody of the Oscar Wilde thing in The Importance of Being Earnest. Mm-hmm. He was found in a bag at the left luggage office at Victoria, when in fact it's Paddington Station where the ticket queues are always insane and you can't understand why it happens like that every single day. Why isn't it sorted out? So Paddington was the station that he had in mind, but he couldn't call her that because there's already a bear named Paddington.
Right.
So he just went through the various names of the London termini, and Fenchurch seemed like a nice name.
Oh, yes.
So he wanted to name Paddington, but there was already a Paddington.
Right.
And then on creating Marvin. Marvin came from Andrew Marshall. He's another comedy writer, and he is exactly like that.
Oh, okay.
When he set out to write the character, he wanted to write about a robot who was Andrew Marshall. And in the first draft, he actually called the robot Marshall. It only got changed on the way to the studio because Jeffrey Perkins thought that the word Marshall suggested other things.
Right.
Andrew was the sort of guy you are afraid to introduce to people in pubs because you know he's going to be rude to them. His wife recognized him first time. He's cheered up a lot recently.
Right.
But I said that on the radio once, that Marvin was Marshall. He said once on the radio that Marvin was Marshall. And his mother heard it. And the next time he spoke to his mother, she said, "Marvin isn't Andrew Marshall. He's Eeyore." And he said, "What?" She said, "Marvin is just like Eeyore. Go and look." So he did. But literature is full of depressives, and Marvin is simply the latest and most metal. And this was something that I had heard ages ago about Slarty Bartfast. And I was waiting and waiting and waiting to run across somewhere that confirmed what I had heard. Slarty Bartfast was a favorite character of Douglas Adams, though he thinks that he slightly misused that character in the third book. But one thing I don't think he explained in the script book was that he was also teasing the typist, Jeffrey's secretary, because the character had been on stage for quite a long time before you know what his name is. Mm-hmm. And he was teasing the typist because she'd have to type out his long name every time he was in the script, even though his name had never been said. And then he gets to his lines and he's saying things like, "My name is not important, and I'm not going to tell you what my name is." And all of that was just to be mean to Jeffrey's secretary.
Oh my gosh, that's great. So that's incredible. I mean, I really enjoyed reading this book, so I didn't want people to think that it wasn't a good book when I started off telling them that I had a little trepidation about the whole thing. But,
right.
I really did enjoy it. I think it exposed us to some new material. And one thing that I was a little questioning, and I still am, even at this point, is Neil Gaiman. How are they related to one another? Do you just happen to know each other?
Yeah, they don't point that out.
Yeah, I mean, he does actually do some actual interviewing within the book where he's interviewing Douglas Adams, and
yes,
they actually lay that out as an interview type. As I've said before, Neil Gaiman is one of my favorite authors, and recently I've been entertaining myself by watching the second season of Good Omens.
Are you watching or rewatching it?
Watching it for the first time, watching the second season.
I've not seen that yet, so do you want to hold off and have that be our Squid Game for this coming convention season?
There are 2 seasons. Did you watch the first one?
Yes, I did.
Okay, right. Well, I've only gotten into 1 or 2 episodes, but yeah, I can definitely, we can definitely do that.
Good, because we need something to watch.
It's interesting because his stories that he writes do translate pretty effectively to a visual image. As far as I can tell. So I enjoyed reading it. I enjoyed the aspects of getting to know Douglas Adams and his friends. And I look forward to the new content that dropped into our laps from having read this book.
Yes, definitely. I completely agree on all of those points.
So, Jeff, now that we've gotten this far, do we know what's happening next?
I guess we do know what's happening next, because like I just mentioned about watching Good Omens, it is convention season, so I'm going to be visiting you out in Philadelphia, and we're going to go to Fan Expo.
Fantastic.
So I have to imagine that the next episode is going to be all about Fan Expo and what we experienced there. Coincidentally, David Tennant is going to be there, who stars in Good Omens.
Yes, he's going to talk about timey-wimey things.
Yes, I'm sure he will, because he was in that Doctor Who story, I think.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. That's coming up pretty soon. And, of course, we're going to review what happens there.
Yes.
Shall we tell them what didn't happen there?
Well, yeah, sure, we could definitely tell them what didn't happen there, which really isn't a big surprise. But if you've ever been to any kind of fan convention, you know that they always have these panels. And rather than starting out at some small local convention with trying to get into a panel for Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, we decided that we were going to go for the big leagues first try.
Well, you gotta go for something, right?
Yeah.
You shoot for the sky and you're gonna hit something.
Right. So we sent an idea for Fan Expo, a couple of different ideas on panels that we thought would be interesting to people, and Fan Expo felt otherwise.
Although they seem to have brought us a little bit more of an audience. So we're excited about that aspect. And of course, we're going to continue to promote ourselves and our content as we go forward. So
right.
That's going to be exciting. I look forward to our next podcast.
Yes.
What about you, Jeff?
I am looking forward to it too, because I am looking forward to gathering all of the information for our next podcast coming up in just a week. So, now that we know what's happening next time, I think I have to say that this is the end. Thank you for listening to this. A new episode is released on the first Thursday of every month. Visit our website at digitalwatchesareaprettyneatidea.buzzsprout.com. While there, you can find links to all of my Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy inspired t-shirt designs. You can contact us via email at digitalwatchespodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on YouTube and Facebook at Digital Watches Are a Pretty Neat Idea. You can message us on Twitter, or should I say X, at Watches Idea, and our Instagram is Watches Idea Podcast.
This has been a Fruits for Thought production, darling. This has been a Fruits for Thought production, darling. This has been a Fruits for Thought production, darling. This has been a Fruits for Thought production, darling. This has been a Fruits for Thought production, darling.